All right, good morning, good morning. Everybody's attention back up here. Thank you. Welcome back. Happy Friday. I hope you're having a good first week. A couple of little announcements before we dive in on page 8. First, everybody grab a Math Studio bookmark. Again, the Math Studio is this wonderful resource right across the hall, and this bookmark tells you exactly when a math faculty member will be on duty to answer your questions. And there are a couple of blocks I want to point out that are important to you guys. One of them is 8 to 8:30, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Right before this class, Caitlin will always be in that room ready to help you with your homework. And then right after class, 10 to 10:30, Linda will be in that room. Oh, so the half hour before and the half hour after our class, there's somebody there every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So take advantage of that resource. Some of you might have noticed that there's not enough time to do all of the homework in the studio right before class. Half an hour isn't going to do it. So what you should do is as much homework as you can outside of class, and then maybe get just some last minute questions answered on right before class, okay? All right, next thing to talk about is the folders that I just put on your table there. Those yellow folders are where you're going to sign in. So if you haven't done so already, put your name at the top of one of those rectangles. And then every day when you come in, the folder will be on your table. You write down what time you got here, okay? So if you got here at 8:30, you put 8:30 into the little box. Every day you'll sign in just on that folder. Normally, that's the only thing the folder is going to do, but today I actually want to collect homework because you wrote to me, hopefully, about yourself as a math student. Normally your homework is just going to be out of the textbook and I'll look at it and then you'll take your textbook back home with you, but today and today only, you have an assignment that I want to see over the weekend. So if you wrote answers to those questions, if we wrote answers to those questions about yourself as a math student, rip it out of your notebook, put it in that yellow folder. I'll take it home and look at it over the weekend. Okay. Last announcement has to do with YouTube. Gang, we're very chatty this morning. What's going on? I'll have plenty of time to chat after I do my little demo here in just a minute, okay? But last announcement before we dive in has to do with this Bluetooth that I'm wearing. So you might want to make a note of this. I record every class that I do, just the demo part of the class. So I have pulled up the video from our first class from Wednesday, and you probably should write that down. This is the title of our very first class video. It has a certain pattern to it. 096, that's what this class is called. 2014 is the year. September, spelled all the way out, was the month. 03, note the 0, it's always a 2-digit date that I put in for the title. Also note there are no spaces. And if you type in that exactly as it is, my video will pop up as the only possible option. But if you type in just about anything else, you will not find this video. So it's easy to find if you have the right format, near impossible to find if you don't. You're also welcome to find me as a user, like that GCC Math Winokur is my username. You know. Also, if you log into Moodle, you'll find a playlist with all of our videos from each of the classes. So if you're comfortable logging into Moodle, maybe that's the easiest place to go. But if you YouTube exactly the right title, you will find exactly the video that you're looking for. So let me just play like 5 seconds of this video so you understand what it is. Okay, so the point is that you see everything that I write on the smartboard and you hear everything I say. Unfortunately, you don't hear anything that you guys say. The mic doesn't pick that up. But anyway, this is here every day after class. It should be posted. Any questions on that? Okay, so here is our calendar. Remember, you have a copy of this, the last page of the syllabus. Today we are on class number 2. We're going to talk about equations used to solve word problems. So this is the plan. Since this is our first real look at the calendar, I want to point out our first in-class assessment is right here. It'd help if I turn that on. Quest number 1. The word quest is a combination of quiz and test. It's kind of in between a quiz and a test. It's a full period thing that is happening on September 17th. And the material covered is all the stuff we do from classes 1 through 5. More details on that coming, but just putting it in your head, September 17th is our first quest. Okay, so let's jump here to page 8 of the big packet, and we'll start way up here at the top, number 1. And we're going to go to Iman in the back. Can you read the daily summary for us? Okay, so this random number stuff we will see soon enough, but that's the main idea for today. Cody, number one.
Sometimes when we are asked to write out this question, it's not sometimes we know how to do the problem.
So today is all about the dreaded word problem, and the most common complaint I hear from math students is, gosh, I hate word problems. I can never do them. They're so hard. They're confusing. So again, we're going to get this technique of using numbers before we dive into the algebra. Nate, can you give us number two? Okay, so here's our first word problem. We've got this cruise that normally costs $2,752, but if we get a bunch of people to go with us, we get some kind of a group discount. And the group discount is $1.75 off for every person that we have in our group. And we'd like to know how many people do we need in order to get that ticket to drop all the way down to $2,500. Now, some of you might already be able to see how to solve this algebraically. Some of you might even be able to see how to solve this not really using algebra, but you just know exactly the right things to do with those three numbers in the problem. If that's the case, super. But if you just don't know how to get started, if you're intimidated by this, then let's start talking about doing this problem with numbers. How about we just make up a number of people? Where is it? How large a group? This is the problem we are trying to answer. Let's just make up a number of people that we can put in. For example, there are about 25 of us in this room, and see if we can solve this problem thinking about 25 people. Just making up a number. So what am I going to do with this 25 to try to figure out how much our reduced ticket price is going to be? Tara. Okay, so we're going to take 25 and we're going to multiply it by $1.75. Tara, why are we doing that? Buy that? It's a per person discount. So we're finding out how much the discount is because every person in our group gets us $1.75 off. Somebody with a calculator, can we get this number real quick? How much is it? 35. 43.75. Okay. So that 43.75, what does it represent to us? That's the amount we're going to get off. Total savings, right? Every ticket is going to get reduced by $43.75. So the last part of this calculation to find our cost per person is to do what with this 43.75? Subtract it from the 27.52. So we take 27.52, subtract off the 43.75. Too early to do arithmetic with borrowing. How much? Thank you. Okay. Fair enough. That was so much fun. Let's try it again. How about we try with 100 people? Yes. Right. So there are ways to just jump right to the answer, and I mentioned that you can do it without even doing algebra if you just kind of understand how those three numbers in the problem work. But we are developing, if we don't have that kind of intuition, we're just coming up with a way to try to get our hands dirty in this problem. 100 people. What do we do with the 100 people? Multiply it by $1.75. All right, so this one we can do without the calculator. That's 175 bucks. And again, that's the discount, right? Every ticket gets $175 off. So we'll take our starting 2752 and subtract the 175. Thank you. Any questions on that process? We haven't answered the problem yet. The problem says, do what you got to do to get a ticket price of $2,500. Well, we're not quite there, but we're getting there. And the idea of this technique isn't to just do this until you finally happen to land on the answer. The idea is that this process is one that we can follow when we go from the specific number calculations to the more general algebra calculations. And so what we'll do, stick our favorite variable letter right over there in the last row. We're going to say x. Instead of 25, instead of 100, we're just calling it this very general, very abstract x. Okay. Many of you might be comfortable right now filling in the bottom row. We're going to hold off for just a moment, take a quick detour, and then come back. So we'll go to number 3. Julia, can you read 3, please? Okay, so we've got these 2 new vocabulary words. They might not be new, but 2 vocabulary words that Julia just read to us about. Quantity words and unit words. And for example, time and hours are both related to each other, right? But one of them is called a quantity and the other one is called a unit. And if you don't know which one is which, it says put a random number in front of each word, and the one that makes sense is called a unit. So for example, does 6 time make sense? No. Does 6 hours make sense? Yes. Only one of them is going to make sense when you throw a number in front of it. And the one that makes sense is called unit. So hours is a unit. And then the other guy must be if you can stick an S on the end of it and it makes sense, it's also going to be a unit. Great. Okay, so why do we care about quantity words and unit words? Well, we've got this X introduced in this problem. We want to be really specific about what X represents. We're not going to have much hope of setting up some algebra problem if we don't understand what the variable that we introduced means. So we're going to say what X represents using a quantity word and a unit word. So can somebody tell us what are we letting X represent in this problem? It's a quantity of people. Yeah, that's perfect. Let's change the word quantity and use just a different word. Amount of people, number of people, anything like that. So then down here, let X equal the number of people. And I'll draw some arrows here. The unit in this case is people. 6 people makes sense. 8 people makes sense. The quantity is just the word number. It's kind of a generic quantity word. Okay, and now I think we're ready to see if we can write down some equation that will allow us to solve this problem. So we're going to do the same calculation that we did up here in blue and purple, but instead of the specific numbers, 25 and 100, we've got an X. So what was the first thing we did? Let's see, we took 25, multiplied it by $1.75, then we took 100, multiplied it by $1.75, so it seems like we should take X and multiply it by $1.75. Now that's only part of the calculation, so I'm going to put that here, X times 175. It's just kind of floating at the moment, but it was part of the process. And then whatever we got after we did that multiplication, what did we do with it? We subtracted it from 2752. Every time that was the pattern. So it seems like right in the front of this, I should put a 2752 minus. Is this an equation or an expression? It's an expression. You can't solve expressions. You can solve equations. So we still haven't used this 2500 business. Ultimately, we're hoping that whatever we get after we do this subtraction is exactly 2500. These ones didn't work, but if I want to force it to work, then I make it equal to 2500. Okay. The rest of this is going to be like straightforward equation solving, and I think it's easier than the setup that we just did. So are there any questions on that setup? All right, so here's the summary of the main idea for today, is that if you don't know how to just dive in with some algebra, if you can't figure out the equation just from the start, no problem. Just make up a number or two. It's guaranteed the problem's going to be easier if you just pick a random number as opposed to thinking about a random x. If it happens that you were able to look at that problem and just jump right to this equation in your mind, super, write it down. I'm not going to force you to make up numbers on the test. The goal is to get to this equation. So if you can just get there straight out, wonderful, lucky you. But if you don't know how to get started on some word problem, try numbers. Okay, let's solve this real quick just so we can get our answer. Let's see, it seems like we should get the stuff away from the x. I've got 2752 and 1.75. Both need to move. Which one goes first? 2752. So I'm going to write out the steps here. At this level, you guys have made it to this class. I don't need to see you write minus 20. If you want to write it, then write it, but I don't need to see it. You can just imagine doing that in your mind. So on the left-hand side, x times 1.75. On the right-hand side, negative 252. Is that right?
Yeah,
What happened?
negative x.
Should be negative x. Does it matter? Is it okay without the negative? Yeah, it matters a lot. It's a really common mistake is when you pick up this number sitting in the front to forget that you haven't done anything with that subtraction symbol, which magically becomes a negative sign in the next line. Really easy to miss that. One technique I've come up with a teacher is that I'll throw in these mistakes that I make on purpose once in a while, so that when I make them not on purpose, I can just say, oh, I meant to do that. Okay, last step is to get rid of this 175. Again, I don't need to see this from you, but dividing by negative 1.75 on both sides is what we need to do. 144.
You want us to always write our answers out for the problem? Right. 44 people, I think it's the right to be.
So if I need to see a sentence at the end, it's my job to tell you I want a sentence. I didn't write it here, but typically I'll say, write a sentence and just sell 144 tickets and the price is 2,500. Just summarize. What's that, Lydia? It is positive in the original, and then we move it by subtracting it from both sides. So move it over to the other side by subtracting. Tara? I don't need you to write out the check every time. If you have time to do it, you should do it. You might catch an error, but I don't need to see it. You could leave it on this side and move the X if you want to. That's totally fine. Okay. So we are now moving back to Jennifer. Could you read number 5, please? Okay, thank you. And you're going to keep that technique in mind as you work through the activities. So starting on the next page, you're going to make sure you know your table mates' names. Ask them. Don't be shy if you've forgotten.